For decades, millions of guys have been told their DNA links them directly to one of Ireland's most legendary high kings. But what if that whole story, built on some pretty early science, is actually hiding an even more incredible tale? A story about medieval mercenaries and a completely hidden royal line. Okay, let's get into this genetic mystery.
So first, to really get what we're talking about, you have to understand DNA markers. Think of them like this. They're little genetic breadcrumbs on your Y chromosome. Each one has a date, kind of like a timestamp, and that lets scientists trace a male lineage all the way back thousands and thousands of years into the past.
And that brings us to the big question. For a long, long time, the popular theory claimed that one specific marker, a marker called M222, was basically the genetic fingerprint of Niall of the Nine Hostages, the crazy powerful high king from the 4th century. And look, this idea didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from some really influential research from Trinity College Dublin back in the early 2000s, and it just completely captured the imagination of genealogists and history buffs all over the world. So the theory was pretty straightforward. If you're a guy and you carry this M222 marker, chances are you're a direct descendant of this ancient king. It's an amazing story, right? A prolific royal bloodline that you can still see today. But this is where things start to fall apart.
Yeah, see, as our genetic technology got way, way more precise, scientists started to find some pretty serious problems with this popular theory. The legend, as it turns out, has some major cracks.
First up, there's a massive timeline problem. The official genealogies, right? They trace Niall's family all the way back to a king from around 120 AD. But here's the kicker. Modern dating shows that the MIC222 marker itself didn't even exist until way later, sometime between 300 and 500 AD. You just can't carry a genetic marker that hasn't even appeared yet. It's impossible. And then you've got the geography problem. This one's a biggie. The ancient royal seat of the High Kings was Tara, right there in the Meath region of Central Ireland. But the genetic hotspot for M222, it's way up in northwest Ulster. That's like looking for a Roman emperor's DNA and finding the biggest concentration of it in Scotland. It doesn't fit the map at all. So you might be asking, how did they get it so wrong? Well, that original study back in 2006 was groundbreaking for its time, but the technology was just less precise. It was using older methods, it made some big assumptions about surnames that we now know are kind of flawed, and it just didn't have the super high-resolution picture of the M222 family tree that we do today. The science just got a whole lot better. This slide nails it. Saying that every M222 guy comes from the O'Neill royal line is basically like saying everyone with the last name Murphy has to be descended from one single medieval king. It doesn't work that way. The reality is M222 is this huge genetic group with hundreds of different branches. It's just too big, too broad to be tied to one single family. Okay, so if M222 isn't the king's DNA, what is it? Well, the answer is way cooler, honestly. It's not found in ancient royalty, but in this dramatic medieval military revolution that completely changed Ireland. We're talking about a mercenary arms race. I want you to meet the Galloglass. These guys were the special forces of their day. Heavily armored, elite, professional soldiers who came over from the Scottish Isles. Irish lords would hire them, and they were an absolute game changer on the battlefield. So it all kicks off in 1259. The O'Connor clan hires their first Galloglass, and it totally upends the balance of power. It sparked this insane arms race. If you wanted to survive, you had to have your own army of these elite warriors. So clans like the O'Neills and O'Donnells started hiring them too. And these guys didn't just fight and go home. No way. They settled in Ulster and became this permanent, hereditary military class. And right here, this is where the history and the genetics just slam into each other. This whole military revolution, that's the real key to understanding where the M222 marker actually comes from. And get this, because this part is mind-blowing. The genetic evidence now shows this incredible round-trip journey for the M222 marker. It looks like it started in Ireland, traveled over to Scotland with early Irish settlers, became super common among the warrior clans over there, and then, centuries later, it was carried back to Ireland by their descendants, the Galloglass. Now, once they were back in Ireland, these elite warriors were a big deal. They were paid with land, they settled down, their families put down roots, and here's the crucial part. A lot of them adopted the surnames of the powerful clans they worked for, like O'Neill, as a sign of loyalty. And that's how a Scottish warrior's DNA suddenly became so common among Irish families with the O'Neill name.
So let's just put it out there, plain and simple. The evidence completely reframes what M222 is. It's not the signature of some ancient 4th century king. It's the signature of a successful, widespread class of professional medieval warriors who were hired by that king's descendants 1,000 years later. But that leaves one giant, dangling question, right? If M222 belongs to the warriors, then where's the DNA of the actual kings? Well, it turns out modern evidence is pointing to a completely different answer.
A new candidate has emerged for the true O'Neill royal line. That's the dynasty descended from Niall. It's a totally different genetic marker called RDF21. And when you actually look at the evidence for this one, it fits the historical puzzle so much better. This chart really lays it all out. When you put them side by side, the case for DF21 is just compelling. I mean, look at the age. DF21 is old enough for the Iron Age roots of the dynasty, but M222 is centuries too young. Look at the geography. DF21's hotspot is right around the royal heartland of Tara, exactly where you'd expect it to be. And the ancient DNA from elite burials? Yep, it's matching up with branches of DF21, not M222. On every single count, DF21 is a much, much better fit.
And honestly, this just makes so much more sense when you think about it. Royal bloodlines weren't usually spread all over the place. They were often kept pretty rare, preserved through strategic marriages with other powerful families. Then, after big events like the flight of the Earls in the 17th century, these elite lines were protected within aristocratic circles in Europe, separating them even more from the regular folks back home.
So, what we really have here isn't a story of one royal marker, but of two totally distinct genetic legacies. You've got one from a rare ancient royal house and another one from the powerful medieval warriors who fought for them. And that leaves us with one final fascinating question to think about. Is your own genetic story tied to a king or to the formidable warriors he hired to protect his